Anyone ever found a body? What's that like? I have posted this before. But in the 1980s, I found a human skeleton while doing land surveying work. The property was about 40 acres in size and wooded. I had gone down a property line to cut a tree limb that was blocking our line of sight. I noticed some bones scattered around. That didn't mean much at first, because animals die in the woods all the time. You see bones. But then I saw the skull and my heart jumped up in my throat. I went back to my truck and radioed it in. I was in the land before cell phones. The sheriff's department came out and started an investigation. But they told me they were fairly sure who it was. We were in a smaller town and there was only one missing person. An elderly man with dementia had vanished about 18 months before. That's who it turned out to be. I was interviewed by our local and regional newspapers. Got my picture in the paper. That was a bit uncomfortable as it made me slightly known for a while. But people soon forgot about it. At least the man's family got some closure. I worked at a retirement home for about a year. More specific at the dementia part of the house, and we had one man who every day was worried sick for his wife, who has been dead for 8 years. On his birthday both of his daughters showed up and talked and showed a lot of pictures. He didn't remember his daughters but he recognized his wife. Tears of joy, he watched pictures and told stories. The morning after when I went to wake him up he was dead. He had a big smile on his face and it was somehow very beautiful. I was at the shooting range once, my first time actually, and an older gentleman shot himself in the stall closest to the door. Everyone had to walk right past his body to evacuate. Gruesome. It looks more disturbing in real life than the movies and everything moved more slowly once I saw it. I was just getting comfortable with my weapon when they called a ceasefire and I stood there wondering what had happened. Suddenly it was calls of everybody get out. Now. Go. Go. Pretty terrifying when you can't initially see what's on either side of you because of the lane barriers and you're wondering what the hell happened so bad we're evacuating. Then just really sad to realize what happened. There was a kid there about 10 years old with his dad and brother. Hate it. Found my dad dead, heart attack, one morning as a 7-year-old. Then when I was 8 I found my grandfather dead, fell. Hit his head. Into tub full of water, one morning. A full family, father mother plus 2 kids, dead in an upside down car on a dark road. I used to work at this sports bar so it wasn't uncommon for people to leave their car in parking lot for a day or two. After having a couple days off I come into work and this car that was there a day before my weekend started is still parked in the same spot. I tell me boss about it and go check it out. As I get close to the car the smell hits me like a truck. Some guy committed suicide in his car during a heatwave in the middle of summer. I call the cops and tell my boss. And the police arrived. I was asked to make a statement. While I was doing this the paramedics showed up to remove the body. They got this bloated rotten corpse halfway out of the vehicle when it just fell apart. Splattering on the pavement. I'll never forget that f-king smell. One night I was out walking my dog along a country road where a ditch accompanied the road either side. As I was walking my dog started going mad trying to tug away from his lead to this ditch so I wanted to see what it was. It ended up being a corpse so I called the cops. They found out that a gang murder happened in a city about 40 miles away and one of the members thought a small village would be a great place to put it. Your dog's a damn snitch, that's all I know. My granddad was a few months shy of 90 and still lived by himself. He was pretty spry. My mom called him every morning. One day he didn't answer so she called me to go over and check on him. They lived about 40 minutes away and I lived about 5 minutes away. I let myself in and found him in his easy chair holding his phone. He was cold. My dad showed up in about 20 minutes and we both cried. I called the police and they came in. Checked it out and did us a favor of calling the funeral home we asked. My dad said he was talking with him about 9 PM the night before and said he was sounding groggy. So he said goodnight. And granddad must have rested and passed. He was a great guy. Edit. I am overwhelmed with all the kind comments and awards. I truly thank you all. Went to check on my uncle because he'd not been heard from. I knew before I got the front door open that he was dead by the smell. He was in his recliner. Drank himself to an early grave. Our town's baseball fields for Little League is in front of a small fenced row of woods with an interstate on the other side. One hot day in July, like 90F all week, everyone at the game started smelling something awful. A couple of the dads and coaches went to go look and there was a dead guy on the interstate side of the fence row. I guess a trucker broke down and was walking for help and died of heat stroke. I was playing baseball and never actually saw, but still a crazy day. I found my dad after he hung himself. It was obviously extremely traumatizing and has taken a lot of therapy. I still get triggered if a movie shows a hanging scene. But I'm doing a lot better. In November of 2004 I had a very best friend who lived 3 blocks from me. We were both managers of the same restaurant, but I had recently graduated from college and had started my career path but still worked with him on weekends and school vacations. One freezing cold Monday night, the restaurant called saying he hadn't shown up for work. I had a key, so my roommate and I walked over. Upon entering his apartment, he was dead on the couch after taking more than 1 bottle of Ambien and a handle of vodka. I don't remember all the details of what I remember from the scene or what it looked like. I'm paying a lot of money in therapy to forget. I was a volunteer with the fire brigade in my former life. We responded to a car accident on a notorious bend a little out of town. People tend to take this particular S-bend way too fast. It's a 100 zone. But cars can't take such tight swerving bends at that speed and not end up a broken mess. So we arrive as the first responders on the scene. Being volunteers, we generally get to events prior to police and ambos. There's a car that had almost made it around the first bend, but lost control. Careered across the opposite side of the road. Rolled. Went through a fence and ended up wrapped around a tree near the second bend 200 meters away. The driver had nearly been decapitated and the front passenger had become part of the car. There was a children's car seat about halfway between both bends that had been ejected from the car likely as it rolled. 4 of us were sent to see if there was anyone injured around. I found the toddler in the paddock dead. I quit not long after that. Don't speed. Buckle your kids up properly. Got back to my GF's house after doing some grocery shopping for her mom. And when we went inside, something was off. Found her older brother with slit wrists in the tub just about the time their mom pulled into the driveway. It was unpleasant. Was with my mom. We were doing an occupancy check because this guy's hadn't paid his rent. This behavior was normal for the people who live on the property, so we go in and see if the apartment was empty. I go to the back room and he's dead in bed. Years ago my kids SNDI were at the NC coast in the off season. We watched a tourist boat go by in the distance and then a short while later the lifeguard behind us took off running into the surf. We watched as he met up with a coast guard on a boat in the distance as they pulled a body onto the boat. We later learned that someone had fallen off the tourist boat and drowned. Then we saw the lifeguard come back out of the water and he looked so defeated. Found my uncle dead in his apartment. I learned that day what a rotting body smells like. Found 4. All at once. Well, actually, the 4th body had been jammed so far under the front passenger seat that I didn't see it. Your damned seatbelts. People. I called in a drunk driver one night. I had a friend whose dad was a policeman. So I asked if he'd heard about it a couple days later. Turns out that because I called, that got the cops over to that side of town looking for the drunk driver. And that meant that they had found the scene of the crash in time to save the passenger's life. Not me, but my dad did. He was fishing and found a guy floating in the Kentucky River. He at first thought it was a dead cow until he paddled closer. The man was badly decomposed and bloated. Our local small town sheriff's department used my dad's boat to transport the body. My dad had trouble sleeping for a while afterward and sold the boat a few weeks later. My grandpa found a body decades earlier in the same area and my uncle did too. It's believed the guy my dad found accidentally fell in while high on meth. I've seen 2 people die, one hit by a car and the other in a workplace accident, and it's something I hope to never have to see again. I should have seen a family die in a car crash. Was at a stoplight. And the guy in front didn't notice the light had turned green. So it was 3 or 4 seconds before he started to move. This delay meant that the semi who blasted through the red light only hit the front quarter panel, instead of hitting the passenger compartment. The guy, his wife, and their baby were all able to get out of the vehicle. If he had been paying attention, he'd have been killed. I used to work in self-storage, and when I left, a buddy of mine took over the property I used to manage. We took a weekend off from our respective jobs to go to Vegas a few years ago. He lived on site in a company apartment. When we got back late in the evening, he walked around his property. It is pretty typical. There was a car parked with someone in it. He knocked on the window and got no response. He called me and told me about it, and as I was close by, I told him I'd be right there. As I got close to the car, I could smell death. The car was locked and all the windows were fogged up inside. It was obvious that the person inside was dead. He called the police and they responded with fire and medical. Yeah, the guy was dead. Reviewing the security cameras showed him come in and park there about 36 hours earlier. It was an overdose. I don't think it was ever determined to be accidental or suicide. Was first on the scene of a head-on collision. Both drivers dead on impact. We walked up to both cars to see if we could help, but it was obvious they were dead. A couple of days later there was an article in the paper about it. And the girl was a teenager. So sad. I got chills down my back and felt like throwing up. Came across a drunk driving accident. Probably happened a minute or 2 before we drove up to it since no one else was there. And it was on the highway. 65 miles per hour speed limit. It was awful. Called the cops and went to see if we could help. But they were clearly dead. One had been ejected out of the windshield and was lying on the highway. The driver turned out to be 20 years old. Really sad. Edit. Just added a few more details like the driver's age. Saw a contractor at work get smoked by an electrical arc from switchgear connected directly to the power company. He was wiping sweat from his eyes when the switchgear arced. His left foot was still in his boot, but that was about all that was left. My manager and I were talking once, bonding over our shared experiences living in South Africa. I was born on Durban. She in Johannesburg. She told me that when she was 12-13 a boy in the year below her went missing. Parents suspected he had been kidnapped and filled a missing person straight away. The school was a tremendous help. Posters, assemblies, overall tougher security. It was the middle of the summer, and the worry grew as the days went by. Almost 2 weeks after his disappearance, his father is checking the garden. For your information, a lot of gardens are more like large plots of land. Unlike the cubes of grass I'm used to here in the UK. He gets to the wall at the other side of the garden and the smell hit him. My manager told me that they suspected the boy had been playing and climbed over the wall, tripped and hit his dad. I can't imagine what a body must look and smell like in the open. For 2 weeks. In scorching weather. But it's not something a parent should ever have to witness. I was walking to school one day when I noticed a car in an alleyway with a broken windshield that had a big brownish stain. When I walked up I saw a dead guy. Turned out he was shot in the head the night before. The blood looked brown because he had been there for a while. I walked in on my brother hanging himself from our bunk bed when I was 13. He got into an argument with my stepdad about something stupid. I apparently got him down by myself. I don't remember that part. And my stepdad gave him CPR and the like while I called 911. He was life-flighted from the high school football field, and I am very thankful to have my big brother around today. I used to work early mornings, 4 AM shift. And on my way to work one day after a bad snowstorm, I noticed a car that had flipped over off the side of the highway. It was covered in snow and in a deep ditch. And if I hadn't been driving so slowly due to the icy conditions, I would have missed it. Pulled over and made my way over to see the driver obviously dead behind the wheel. What bothers me most is his injuries didn't look severe enough to kill him. I'll never know for sure, but I am afraid he became trapped in his car and froze to death. Twice. The first time, I was living in a major city and a pedestrian was apparently run over during the night. His body landed in front of my home, 2 houses down from where he was hit. The second time, in another town, there was a dead man lying in my street. It was determined he was fighting with another guy and they were chasing each other through the streets. The deceased was stabbed. When I was 4 and staying with my grandparents, my grandma sent me to wake my grandpa. Well, he didn't wake up. Don't remember much. Just that my grandma was kinda shocked and started crying. I doubt I really did grasp what was happening there. I'm not sure if this counts, but I was walking to school, elementary, one day like 8 AM. I'm between 9 and 11 yo. Past a 3-story building and there was a body hung off the side. Turns out dude shot his wife then hung himself from his balcony. No one got there soon enough to deal with it before all the kids walked by and saw. Even by after school he was still there, but they covered him with a blanket. Fun stuff. I'll see if I can find a news report. The kids are almost here, quick cover him up. Throws blanket over body. Now he looks like a ghost. Haven't found a corpse but witness a man get ran over by a semi whilst he was riding a pedal bike. The road allows no bicycles or pedestrians. The smell of the soap and death is permanently engraved in my brain. I mean, yes. But I work at a hospital and used to work in a nursing home and it's not as alarming in those settings. I read this as credit question and was like, what a dumb question. Of course I've found a body. I work at a funeral home. It feels like a Tuesday. Scrolled past it. Then had to scroll back up because I'm an idiot. Super uneventful. I was like 6 or 7. First grade field trip in the Everglades. Didn't really understand what it was and they shuffled us away real quick. It didn't seem all that weird until we got back to the bus and news vans were showing up. Yes. My sister. Almost immediately knew she was gone. And felt so detached from what I was seeing. Almost like I wasn't even seeing her as my sister. And just hollow death. Think it was just my way of coping with what I was seeing and not really accepting just how awful it was. It was a really cold experience. Totally numbing and my senses just shut off. I was way more apathetic than I'd expect. Hyper focused on remaining calm and collected in how I responded. The sinking feeling of reality started to kick in when emergency responders took over. Absolute depression. Eventually lost it when things got quiet. Sort of. I watched someone become a body right in front of me. There was a motorcycle in front of me at a red light. He made a right on red and immediately got plowed by a Tacoma driving through his green light on a 45 mpg road. I jumped out of my car immediately and went for the downed rider, but FCK. He had an open face helmet and he went face down for 30-40 feet. It was very bad. And he was immediately dead. No pulse. No breathing. And I couldn't bring myself to even try CPR because his face was gone. Let's go with gone. I was also in the army and suicide bombers were less disturbing for me than this tragedy. My dad found a dead body in his hot tub on the 11th of September of this year. He had just used the hot tub the night before. And sometime between 12:30 am and 5 PM a random dude in the middle of the countryside wandered in there, shot up, closed the lid on himself and OD'd. Dad found him after having been cooked at about 104 degrees for some time frame. My folks have been through a lot. But this one shook them up pretty bad. No idea who the guy was either, so I guess that was the upside.